Hi, welcome to Edward Box Guitar Tuition. So my classic album inspection today is Judas Priest's 12th studio album, Painkiller. This was released September 14th, 1990. It's 35 years old today. So Priest were in a bit of a pickle around this time. They'd had massive commercial success with the Scream for Vengeance album, and not quite as much success with Defenders of the Faith, but they'd done very well. And then chasing more sales, they did the Turbo album, a record I like, but they alienated a lot of their core, heavier fan base. The response to that was to do the Ram It Down album, which was kind of heavier in places, but used the same kind of production ideas and daft lyrical content. And the upshot was they got their first gold album with that after a run of several platinum albums. So they needed to prove themselves in the time that the Ram It Down album came out and Turbo came out. Metallica had laid down the marker and released their first three albums, of course, Master of Puppets being a benchmark. The thrash thing had sort of staked its claim as the home for true metal fans, and the whole LA hair metal, glam metal, MTV rock thing had got very saturated. I wouldn't say it had run its course at that point, but it was going to. So Priest had something to prove. I think the first big decision was David Holland left and was to get Scott Travis in on drums. So people like myself were familiar with Scott Travis's work in the band Racer X. If you listen to a track like Scarified, you know what he was capable of. He could bring that high energy double bass, double kick drum technique to Priest that at first had been sort of prevalent with Simon Phillips, and although Les Binks did that, he wasn't as good as Simon Phillips, and that was kind of Priest's sort of little loss there, you know. I love Les Binks' mind, but Simon Phillips could really do that. So that was something that was going to definitely bring something to the party, but I don't think everyone was quite prepared for how metal this album was. In some ways, this album's like a, you know, metal would really struggle in the 90s. You know, Maiden would struggle. Hell, Metallica would kind of struggle in a weird way when they did the Load album. You know, it became very complicated, and Pantera would sort of like become the kind of de facto heavy band that was influenced by Priest and so on. So this was kind of like a last hurrah, but it showed where metal was, when the dust had settled, where metal was going to go, and basically traditional metal would merge in with the heavy down picking and double kick beats of thrash and form into power metal, really European power metal, where you brought in the fantasy lyrics sometimes of a band like Rainbow, the crunching riffing, double bass techniques on Painkiller and so on. So Priest, you know, made an innovative album here, but it didn't, although it caught quite a bit of fire at the time, it came out at a time when things were starting to go their way. So it only went gold, this album, but imagine it gets good steady resales, and the track Painkiller is a very popular track. But let's dive into it. It opens with Painkiller. There's nothing I can tell you about this track. This, if you had to define heavy metal and what a heavy metal song can be like lyrically, what its guitars can sound like, what its singing can sound like, particularly what its drums can be like, you just need to play someone Painkiller. It's got an outstanding drum, which I still think, you know, maybe Stargazer aside, that's the only thing to give it a run for its money. It's the greatest drum intro in our beloved genre. Travis is really interesting. Travis just laying down his mark, and the band clearly encouraging him all the way to come up with what is a superb piece. Interesting fact about the snare sound on this album: it actually has white noise cut into it. So Chris Sangarides used a white noise sampler, recorded some white noise like kind of hiss you get on a TV, and that's sampled into the drum sound. You can almost hear that harsh crackle in the sound. Very clever. That's the other thing you notice. The tracks, all the guitars are very in your face, just really hairy. Everything is in your face, and I think that's something about this album. It takes big risks in a lot of ways with the Priest sound. And its hair is dangerous. It threatens to blow out the speakers. Pretty amazing. You've got this epic Tipton solo on it. Mad drums at the end, a bit like Delivering the Goods. You know, it's an all-time metal classic. Next up's Hell Patrol. This is a great track. Really good, much more melodic. I like the heaviness of this. but it's got like I said, half more melodic on it. It's a typical sort of motorbike song. The Priest do. 3 minutes 35, really good arrangement, nice harmony lead and a nice lead break from Tipton. Then you go into All Guns Blazing. This opens with Halford's Twisting the Strangled Grip. Brilliant, just really you know, really just simple pounding riff, simple repeating chorus. All guns blazing. In a lot of ways, this track kind of predates what Halford had done on the Fight album. Just very similar arrangement, simple riffage, repeating the title for the chorus. Again, handy lead break. I think they played this live when I saw them on this tour. Then you got Leather Rebel. This is probably the weakest track on the album for me, but it's got a nice, you know, sort of galloping 16s type riff. Again, it's kind of like motorbikes. It's kind of like combining with the Painkiller imagery on the front covers. You say the front covers, you know, one of the most metal covers ever. I've never liked it as much as the cover for Screaming for Vengeance or Defenders of Faith, but it's not subtle. There's nothing subtle on this album, and if you look at the album cover, it tells you that story really. Then you got Metal Meltdown. Not going to win any prizes for lyrics. This starts off with a couple of lead breaks trailing off seriously up tempo riffing, really fast, you know, proper speed metal. And then in the middle section, you just go down, you know, it's going as evil riffs. You can hear someone's clanking a fucking hammer off an anvil or something. And then it just fucking explodes. Literally, the track melts down at the end. And that was the end of side one. I'll tell you a story when I first got this album, but I won't do that. I'll discuss it at the end. And you'll probably be surprised. But anyway, then you got Nightcrawler. I think it's a great track. Again, it's got a nice, really heavy Phrygian riff. I think that's the other key thing with this album. Priest copied the thrash bands by using the Phrygian mode for the riffs. Painkiller uses that tonality. Technically, if you're a guitar player, you could say that Painkiller riffs in the Locrian mode because it uses the B flat and the F note. So people who know the music theory, people who know their scales, you know, although you'd never sort of think of that tonality, you probably wouldn't play that scale if you're soloing over it. But Nightcrawler's great, and I love the way this breaks down in the middle section with all the noises and sound effects. Simple harmony solo. Just really good metal songwriting on this. Really good fade out. Beware the beast! Then you got Between the Hammer and the Anvil, probably my third favourite track on the album, or second. Really good, really cool harmonised fifths in this that kind of uses parallel harmony, not diatonic harmony, so it's kind of a bit weird sounding. Really almost like a jawbreaker type riff, like Rob's lyrics on this. I think these are some of the best lyrics in the album. I don't think the lyrics are great on this album. It's very sort of just, you know, typical metal imagery, but I like this. I really like the odd time change before the solo. Nice to hear KK get a break here. We'll talk about that in a bit, but KK comes in the first break and it's good, and then Glenn comes in with some tapping. As it should be. That's always what's worked well in Priest, you know, both of them setting up for each other. Then you've got Touch of Evil. This is the only track with a different co-write. Chris Tsangarides had the riff for this, the producer. Got to say, this album is probably the album that Chris Tsangarides is best remembered for as producer. I always thought he did a solid job on other stuff. He had a great track record. Particularly good job on Man T's Mean Street album. But this is a great production job. He really, after the Tom Allen years getting tired on the Ram It Down album with the production, he absolutely fucking ignites it, and there's a real creativity with the production. There's lots of sonic sounds, lots of whammies, the white noise thing, very good. Touch of Evil's a great melodic redle track. This is the kind of single. This is the most commercial track off the album. It's got a bit of keyboards in it, so this is the one that could almost, you know, if you did it with chorus guitar sounds, would sit on the Ram It Down or the Turbo album. Really like it. Lovely tips and solo, builds really well. Just a lovely stretch on it. Half is great on it. Then you got Battle Hymn, a little instrumental that goes into the final track. It's okay, this, you know, it's an Hellion, but it just builds up before what I think's one of the great Judas Priest deep cuts, you know. It's actually on a live outings recently. It's One Shot of Glory. This is a great track. I really love the lyrics on this. Love KK's lead break's good, Tipton's good. Quite a lot of kind of emotion on this. Really good. And victory, remember. And again, the lyrics and the imagery, I mean, again, it evokes that sort of battle metal imagery. Kind of like what Saxon were doing with Crusader as well. You can hear in tracks like that bands are going to latch onto that lyrical style, latch on the imagery, and you're just going to get loads of Swedish, Norwegian, German. And Primal Fear is a great example of a band. If you listen to a track called Kiss of Death off the Nuclear Fire album, you know, it's their Hell Patrol. Okay, so what would I mark this out of 10? As I've gone through life, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It is the last classic Judas Priest album. I think Firepower, I actually prefer Firepower, but I wouldn't say it's classic because of the era it comes in. You know, this is the classic Judas Priest lineup with a new drummer. They've never had a classic lineup with a drummer. They've had classic periods. And Scott Travis is a longer serving drummer. And when it came out, it was a big buzz. I remember buying Kerrang and it got 5 stars. I was so excited. But you'll be shocked to know when I first got this album, I couldn't get into it. So this is the weird track back about this. So when I got the album, you know, I was hugely excited. Back then I tended to have a kind of polar sort of view. I either loved a track, loved this, or didn't like something. So I loved Painkiller, but I wasn't bothered with Hell Patrol. All Guns Blazing, I loved that. I wasn't bothered with Leather Rebel or Metal Meltdown. Side 2, I loved Nightcrawler, Between a Hammer and Anvil, Touch of Evil, but I didn't like One Shot of Glory. Wasn't fussed. And I think really the reason was I liked Priest before that, and I had no problem with the Turbo album. I don't have a problem with the Turbo album, but I've got some problems with it. I certainly don't have a problem with the Ram It Down album either, but looking back now, we've been more critical of that. And I liked I was happy with Priest commercialisation. With this, I felt they were getting on the thrash bandwagon, obviously. And for me, I was never into thrash. I like the chunky riffing. There was a lack of melody. Now, there's quite a lot of melody on this, but due to the aggression and things like that, it didn't have the kind of singing out choruses that, say, Screaming for Vengeance did, or Defenders, or Turbo. And it just took me by surprise. The other thing as well, I felt KK and Glenn were trying to copy the guitarists of the time, you know, in Sweet Picking. They'd been doing that since Turbo, really, a little bit on Defenders and certainly on Ram It Down, but I really like the solos on those, but I felt on these albums the solos were a bit lacking melody. It was getting a bit too far away from the blues-based thing. But looking back now, they were trying to, you know, do their guitar solos to kind of fit in with this aggressive style. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think, you know, the criticism I'd have at the time, and I still maybe a bit criticism of the album, it's a very two-dimensional album. You've basically got fast fucking heavy stuff, Painkiller, All Guns Blazing, Metal Meltdown, Leather Rebel, and then you sort of got Hell Patrol, One Shot of Glory, and then you've got your kind of slightly more subdued tracks like Nightcrawler, Between Hammer and Anvil, Touch of Evil. It's basically an album that goes in on 10 and doesn't go very far below that. It's like I said, everything's on 10, the drums are on 10, the guitar solo's on 10. Ian Hill's probably on 10, but it's hard to hear him, and not Halford. This is the last album where he can really, really scream. I mean, Halford still does screams, but you know, okay, maybe not the Fire album, but certainly when you get the Resurrection album, yeah, he doesn't try Resurrection, but he's been more judicious. But he absolutely gives his all on this. And obviously at the time as well, I was kind of felt some of the lyrics were just kind of a bit stupid metal lyrics. Remember, Priest did really intelligent lyrics on tracks like Sinner and Stay in Class. You know, and then even into the early 80s, there were some really cool phrases. You know, and tracks like Leather Rebel, Metal Meltdown, you know, they're fairly daft, especially for guys their age. But, you know, I love the metalness of it. As time's gone on, you know, it's got its place in history. It's like, how do I just do the most metal album I can? Well, go and listen to Painkiller. And that's it. And that's where its big place in history is. This was an album as well that got a lot of people into Priest, people who are new to heavy metal, and wanted to check it out, got this album, and that's why it's a lot of people's favourite Priest album of all time, or sometimes people's second or third. Now, people who know me know that I'm a kind of classic era Priest, 70s first and the 80s. So my all-time Priest albums, it's just a bit further down. But it's been a joy for me to kind of get to love it more. I kind of get frustrated that I didn't get it at the time, but my head was I was still in an 80s kind of Dokken Rat, TNT headspace. I was into Queensrÿche and that. I couldn't really, get into the thrash side of things. But as time's gone on, and if you listen to Priest's new stuff, you can hear the influences of this album. This was the album that they were able to work out how to keep the Judas Priest melodic essence, but get the heaviness in there. Yeah, like I say, and the other thing as well, it's that classic thing that Priest have done many times in their career. It starts with one of their great songs and finishes with a great deep cut. If you think of Turbo Love and then Reckless, Delivering the Goods, Evil Fantasies, Electric Eye, Hellion Electric Eye, Devil's Child, Sinner, Dissident Aggressor, Victim of Changes, Island Domination. It's got that thing. And I really love that. One shot of glory can come in at the end and just fucking deliver the goods. The only other criticism, I think this is, again, it's one of those albums where, you can see KK Downing's nose will get put out of joint by his lack of solos. Painkiller, Tipton does the epic solos about 1 minute and 10 seconds, and KK gets the sort of 20-second break at them, which is really cool. But when I listened to Tipton solo, sometimes there's a couple of bits in there, I thought KK could have come in here and just flip the switch another way, and then Glenn come back in, and it's the same. Organs blazing, Glenn, Hell Patrol. On those 3 tracks, he's taking long extended solos, and Priests are always better. Even though Glenn's a superior player, it's always better when KK gets just, there's those trade-offs and things like that. It always added something, it never subtracted to me, because the difference in the styles made that interesting. But anyway, that's my take on the Painkiller album, a classic of heavy metal, a precursor blueprint for the power metal that would come, and the last classic album, the original classic era of Judas Priest. 12 albums in, how many bands could do that? How many bands have done that? I don't think any band in the history of metal produced an album of this caliber 12 albums in. And sorry, our main fans counting through, but I don't think, I can't remember my maiden numbers, but anyway, Priest, they deserve credit for this. They really do. Okay, remember, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks.